Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Ali.
And today is a very special day for many, many reasons. First of all, this is our last episode of 2023, which is really sad, but it's kind of perfect because there is so much to talk about that it feels like a wonderful culmination of everything today. If I were to ask you what the highlight of 2023 was for you, it's probably the World Cup for all of us, right? I mean, obviously for me, because I was there and I ate a lot of Tim Tams, and despite what happened to the US, I just loved this World Cup.
Yeah, I think the World Cup is definitely up there for me as, one of the great sporting events.
Yeah,
England
it's
getting
not
to the
West Ham,
final.
that's for sure.
We got to a final. England got to a final, which we haven't done before. So yeah, it was phenomenal.
I love that you just scooted right over my joke.
I am, because you're going to make me talk about it later.
I am going to make you talk about it later. Speaking of the World Cup, the U.S. much anticipated U.S. women's national team docu-series, mini-series, whatever, it dropped like 6 days ago. So we haven't gotten to talk about this on air, Ali. Have you watched it yet?
I have watched it, and my overwhelming thing, the reason I'm giggling like a maniac is it is so clearly the way it's been set up was meant to be USA three-peat. Look how great we are. Rah!
I didn't get that vibe, actually.
Oh no, you so like in the very beginning, in like the first like episodes, you really saw it like this big like this is going to be the documentary to document the big three-peat. They keep saying three-peat. Like, seriously, guys, if you want a drinking game over Christmas, take a shot every time the word three-peat's mentioned in this documentary, because I tell you now, you'll be hammered within half an hour. It is ridiculous. So you can tell, and then they've obviously had to pivot it and change it into something else.
Listen, you watch it with your biased eyes. I watch it with my biased eyes. I didn't
please
see
call out
that.
your own bias, because you always say, whenever I say anything about the US,
Of course, I'm calling out my own bias.
And I'm like,
I mean, I just think it was such a big part of the narrative going into the World Cup that they would be remiss to not mention that was just part of it. But I don't know. I have to say, I didn't love it. And it's not just because of how it actually ended, which I had to rewatch. I just thought I didn't really get it, because I feel like most people that are watching that are diehard soccer fans, and they were catering it to an audience that isn't a diehard soccer fan.
That. I 100% get that, because I was the same thing. I watched it, and I've rewatched it, because I watched it first just with friends and we were all like laughing at it, and then I watched it back on my own, and I was watching it, I was like, this is so supposed to be like an intro to the US. And I'm like, what is this documentary? When you compare it to like the Tilly's documentary,
right,
that our good friend Alicia talked about on our show, and how that was so about Australia and about the team and everything else. Whereas this was so light and fluffy and just not really getting into the nitty-gritty of the football. And I'm like, no.
I agree.
No.
Yeah. I wish they'd followed more people. Like, I loved who they followed. I loved that they followed Lynn specifically, Lynn Williams.
That was huge.
But I wish that they'd followed more people. Yeah, and got into it more. It was just when they started describing how the World Cup works, I was like, I am not the target audience.
Right. That was it. That was the thing. That was it. I was like, I would so rather you guys had really got into it and really like, even if it had the outcome and be different and you guys did get your three-peat and all of that, it still would have been more interesting to have those narratives and those stories. Like when they talked to Mewis and they were talking about how hard it was for her to get back in and stuff like that. That was great. But like you said, when they were talking about like how the tournament works, I was like, oh boy.
I mean, some of it just felt like it was like a Christy Mewis talk, which like obviously isn't a bad thing, but it's not what I thought I was watching. Okay, moving on from that, it's my birthday today.
Woohoo! Happy birthday!
It couldn't be a better present than to record this on my birthday. I'm turning 18, in case anybody's wondering.
Are you hungover? Because we've recorded on your birthday before, and you have been, or the day after your birthday, and you have been hammered. Or
I wasn't. No. Let me correct that. I've never been drunk during recording.
No, but you've been going through it.
I was drunk the night before sometimes. No, your girl was like in bed at 10 p.m. last night. It was a Sunday night. So, I had to get my sleep. I had to get my 8 hours.
So what happens when you go past 30? When you hit once you've hit the 3 in the front of your age, you're like, I'm done. Bed.
Yeah, it's bedtime.
It's
Yeah.
bedtime.
Okay, everybody, we're going to get into it. We've got a big episode. We're doing WSL, we're doing NWSL. We're basically going to cover as many topics as we can because it's the final episode of 2023. But WSL is over for the year.
Christmas.
Champions League is not yet over for the year. Keep that in
No.
mind, everybody. So we still have some football to watch. Don't log off of it yet. But this, of course, this is our last episode before break. We will be back the third week in January. The WSL kicks back off Saturday the 20th, and we are back the week before that, Wednesday the 17th. But until then, you've got this beautiful episode. So let's get right into it.
We're starting off with the WSL because WSL be crazy. Like this
Yeah.
weekend was like basically WSL went, you know what? This is the last game we're going to play for like a month. Let's just give everybody what they want, which was chaos.
I feel like we were kind of primed for this with the matchups. I mean, we called this out last week. I think we called out United Liverpool. That's one we're going to talk about. The North London derbies, always one to discuss. And then we had the bottom of the table clashes, including West Ham Leicester City, which we will get onto. So we were primed for it, and it really didn't disappoint. And to my dismay, our game of the week has to be the North London derby. Tottenham took down Arsenal 1-0 at home. This was a huge moment for Tottenham. And we're going to dig into this game. There's a lot to discuss on both sides. But for some reason, I mean, this happened a couple of years ago too. Tottenham is really like Arsenal's Achilles heel when it comes to them.
This is the first time they've beat them. Can I just point that out?
Yeah, but a couple of years ago, Arsenal needed the 3 points and they drew, which ended up being big in terms of the league. So Tottenham really have been a bit of an Achilles heel for Arsenal.
It is, but tell you what, it was one of those things where if this time last week, I would have said Arsenal had it in the bag. It was going to be an Arsenal through and through. Then the Conti Cup match happened on Wednesday. And the fact that Arsenal had to come back from behind 3 times and eventually took the extra point through penalties, I was like, ooh, Tottenham are going to be mad. Tottenham are going to go for it in their own ground. Like, remember, this is the big men's stadium. They played at White Hart Lane for this game. Tottenham are going to go for it, and Arsenal didn't know what to do. And we'll get into why, but
oh wait, totally disagree. Your take on this game is that Tottenham went for it and Arsenal didn't know what to do?
Yes, Arsenal were pathetic compared to Tottenham. Arsenal were pathetic, and you know this is true because I won't compliment Tottenham on anything. My West Ham blood won't let me compliment Tottenham on anything. So the fact that I'm saying that Tottenham was so on top and Arsenal were pathetic tells you that is the truth.
Just absolutely not. Hang on a second. Let me pull up some stats here because, I mean, this is just the beginning of it. Arsenal dominated possession. Arsenal had 31 shots compared to Tottenham's 5. 8 shots on target compared to Tottenham's 3. And while Tottenham won,
and what did they do with it? What did they do with it?
But that's the point. It's like, that's what we need to talk about. It's not the fact that Arsenal didn't know what to do with Tottenham. Tottenham didn't know what to do with Arsenal, but Arsenal, I mean, let's just talk about Arsenal first because here we are.
Your Arsenal bias is showing, sweet.
It's really not. The story of this game is that Arsenal dominated possession. They dominated opportunities, but as has been the story of Arsenal all season, I've said this on the podcast before, they can make chances, but they can't create dangerous chances. And that's exactly what happened in this game.
Which meant they didn't know what to do.
It was a free-flowing, creative, wonderful, beautiful soccer for Arsenal. It was like how Spain can play the most gorgeous soccer and then not score at all. And frankly, I think this was not a defensive failure for Arsenal. This was an attacking failure for Arsenal.
I disagree wholeheartedly. I mean, yeah, you couldn't score to save your life. Like, you couldn't hit a barn door at 10 paces. But I will say, and I tweeted it out, and I would like to point out I was in the tattoo studio watching this game, so maybe I was slightly like out of it as I'm like getting jabbed with the giant leg piece that I got done. But I was watching it and and we'll talk about the goal in a bit, but I felt like there was 100% a defensive error. And, you know, Zinsberg, I love you, but you gotta go. Like, if Arsenal want to keep any help in any of
Well,
winning champions and going into like Champions League and stuff like that, Zinsberg, your time is done. It's done.
the goal that Tottenham scored was absolutely a defensive error on Arsenal's part, but I would not put that on Zinsberger, and that's somebody who that's coming from somebody who I've been very outspoken about how Arsenal need a keeper that's better than the level that Zinsberger is at if they
Yeah.
want to achieve what they want to achieve. But this goal specifically was actually not. It was Arsenal getting caught way too high, getting caught out with too many players up in the attacking half, in the attacking third, and not being able to track back in time. And specifically, Illistat, one of the center backs, who frankly I thought had been really coming into her own and having a wonderful
Well, she
game.
had a shocking game.
This was just kind of a moment where Arsenal sent too many players forward, got a little bit too confident. Illistat couldn't get back on time. Nobody picked up the weak side. I thought Wubben-Moy was caught way out of position. She should have picked up the weak side. This was specifically a defensive error in tracking back, in communication, and in getting caught too high. And there was nothing Zinsberger could have done.
See,
There
this
was nothing Mary Earps could have
no,
done in
no,
that
no, no.
situation.
But this is why I'm blaming Zinsberg, right? I'm not saying in like the actual moment of the goal, it's her fault. Like, you're right. Nobody was touching that goal. Martha Thomas is on the street and stuff like that. But who controls your back line?
I
Who
knew you
is
were
it?
going to say that.
Who is supposed to be the person that's telling your defender? Like, I'm a defender, right? I'm not saying I'm at that level. I'm the defender. I'm listening to my goalkeeper yelling at me because they can see they can see
I'm
what's
yes
happening.
and no,
And
but you
Zinsberger's too
also
quiet. Zinsberger's too quiet. You can never hear her yell at her defenders to get their like, I was stood behind her at the West Ham Arsenal game, and you couldn't hear her. And if I can't hear her and I'm standing right by her, what hope do her players halfway up the pitch have? So my argument is the reason Zinsberg needs to go is Arsenal needs someone that's more controlling of their back line, and she is not. So that is why it is her fault.
I don't think that's for me. That's not a good enough reason to like put it on Zinsberger. Wubben-Moy had to have her head on a swivel. Illistat got caught out. Like for me, that's not enough to put it on Zinsberger. And again, that's coming from somebody who separately I would replace her if I
Yeah.
was in charge of Arsenal. But frankly, you make one defensive error in this game and you lose the game. And to me, this is why I say, and I'm sure some people would disagree with me because I think this wasn't what the narrative was around Arsenal. This was an offensive failure for Arsenal. And once again, what's been plaguing them all season comes back to bite them. You cannot have that many opportunities and come away with 0 goals. You cannot lose a game where you give the other team really one solid opportunity and they score it. That's just for me it's an attacking failure. And I put it more on Arsenal's failure to score than I do on the defensive failure that resulted in Tottenham's goal. And that's not to take away from Tottenham. We can talk about Tottenham as well because frankly they executed their game plan perfectly.
Yeah, I was going to say, because we're talking about it being a failure on Arsenal's attacking front. You look at the back line Tottenham had, right? So you've got James, Bueller, Bartrip, and Neville. All 4 of those are exceedingly good defenders. Molly
Yeah.
Bartrip has come into her own this season in such a way that I have never seen her play like before. She is just absolutely thing. You've got Grace Clinton coming up in the wing and on the
Yeah.
in the midfield, who is on loan from Man United, I believe, and is phenomenal. Is a phenomenal up and coming talent. But looking at that back line against Tottenham, they were outstanding.
I couldn't agree more. I thought Tottenham executed their game plan, like I said, absolutely perfectly. The Thomas England combo is lethal and is so perfect for the Tottenham style of play, the transition based, the counter attack based style of play. And the question was, like, how are these two going to link up? Are they going to be able to play together well? Oh my goodness. To watch those two combine was truly beautiful, and some of the runs that they could make in behind and the balls that were being played, and both of these players have the ability to play as that like far attacking striker, that number 9 that can make the run, and they both have the ability to be the one that's pulling back and playing the ball into the run. So truly, to watch Tottenham execute this was always their game plan. They knew they weren't going to have possession against Arsenal. They knew they would have a few opportunities, and they wanted to stop the shots, stop the dangerous opportunities, and put one of their few opportunities away. Check, check, check. Like, you have to give them credit for that. And I absolutely do. All right. So we can't move on from this without talking about a lot of the buzzing transfer news that's been coming out kind of around Arsenal. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. So obviously there are two big stars that are believed to be heading their way to Arsenal. The key thing we need to remember before we talk about who they are is Arsenal's roster is full. Arsenal do not have places at the moment for new players. So they would have to get rid of some players in order for these players to come into the gap. So one of them is an obvious of who you would move on, maybe. And then the other one, I'm interested to see who you think they would need to move on. So the first one, the obvious one, is Mary Earps to Arsenal. And we'll talk about it when we talk about Man United Liverpool. But I'm going to be honest, I watched the Man United Liverpool game and I was like, oh, this is a Mary goodbye. The way she was, I was like, this is a Mary goodbye. Whether she's going to Arsenal or not, I don't know. But I think they're going to have learnt from Russo and want to actually get some money for her, because if she goes in summer, they don't. But yeah, it just felt like it was a Mary goodbye to me. But yeah, the rumor is she's going to go to Arsenal either in January or in the summer.
It's been the rumor for a long time, so I'll be curious to see if it actually happens. But obviously, based on the conversation we just had, we both agree that Arsenal could certainly use her. All right, the second one was very surprising to me, and that is a rumored deal that could go through any moment, that Emily Fox, the U.S. Women's National Team international, could be on the move to Arsenal as well. And the moment I heard this, immediate reaction was it would be an incredible pickup for Arsenal. It would be a really great experience for a very young star. But I would be so sad to see her leave the NWSL. But I think it would be so positive.
Yeah. So who would she replace?
Maybe it would be Maritz, who hasn't seen a lot of time. Maritz, when you're just looking at, if you pick somebody up, most likely the person that's going to get dropped is the person who has seen the least amount of playing time. And she hasn't seen that much of it. So maybe.
Yeah, it could well be. I could see it. I mean, I think it's a great move for Emily Fox. I do. I think one of the best ways for any player, not just Americans, but to become one of the rest of the world is to play in different leagues. You know, we've seen, and to pick up that different playing style. And I would be excited to get Fox over into a European league, and in the WSL, even better.
I think it would be great for her for a lot of reasons, and even for visibility. I think probably a lot of people in the UK don't know a lot about who she is and what she can do. And she's one of my favorite young players to watch. I think she's so exciting. So it could be really great for her.
So the second game we have to briefly mention and talk about, which was the second upset of this weekend, which was Man United versus Liverpool. Now, United had a great opportunity to climb back into the top three with this game and thought we'd do it, and Liverpool ended up taking it 2-1.
These two teams were not separated by many. They were separated by 3 points on the table before this game. So it was technically an upset, but I mean, Liverpool, credit where credit is due. They've had a better season than I think most people can remember right now. So, and now they're sitting even with United. I'm seeing the point specifically that I would like to make, probably the most important point about this game, is that both teams, round of applause for the uniforms. Great uniforms on both ends. Absolutely love the purple for Liverpool. Love the rainbow numbers for United. Absolutely fantastic job, both teams.
I don't know why uniforms just makes me laugh whenever you call them that. You're always like, oh yeah, the uniforms are great. I'm like,
I'm sorry, the kits.
It's a kit. It's a kit. It's a kit. It's not a uniform.
It's a costume. No.
But I agree. I do. Man United went all out for their rainbow, because it was Rainbow Laces. For anybody who's not in the UK doesn't know, Rainbow Laces is a charity weekend that's normally the second weekend in December, and teams play in Rainbow Laces for LGBTQ plus support. United went full out and did the rainbow numbers, which makes me think they're probably going to auction those shirts off because they've gone all that way out, which I think will be massive. So yeah, fair play, Man United.
All right, so let's get into it. Liverpool took down United 2-1. Who would you like to dive into first, Liverpool or United?
Let's talk. I want to talk about the pool. Let's talk about Liverpool because they were. I mean, you say they weren't separated by like only 3 points in the table. They were the underdogs in this game. Let's be honest, right?
This is true. This is
They've
true.
never again another team never beaten their opponent. They'd never beaten Man United. I think they may have got a draw in a Conti once, but it's always very much you're going into that game. Man United are the favourites. Man United, Liverpool. There's a huge rivalry history in the men's game with these two teams, so it was a very big thing with this team.
There's some weight behind it.
There's some weight behind it. There's some weight behind it. And you know what? They went down 1-0 really quickly. Super quickly in this game. Like
Yeah.
Tooney goal it was super quick. And you all went literally, I was following like some friends and we all went, oh, here we go. This is it. It's gonna keep pounding. And you know what? Liverpool, what they did really well is they didn't break their shape. Like they didn't get their heads down, they didn't stop, but defensively they did not break their shape for this game, which has been their problem because they try and throw things at the kitchen sink and see what sticks. They were gifted their first goal, which has now gone down as a Turner own goal. I think that's harsh. I do think
it was harsh. Yeah,
it was going in anyway. She just may have slightly tapped in.
It was a harsh own goal. Yeah,
but then the Taylor Hines goal in the 68th minute was a thing of beauty. It was a thing of beauty. Like you have to stand and applaud that.
It really was. I love your comment about the shape because United, when they started so well, they started off, like you said, 1-0 within a few minutes. And frankly, it could have been 2-3-0 within 10 minutes. That's how many great opportunities they had. And Liverpool, not only did they keep their shape, they kept their wits about them emotionally. And they really, really grew into this game. And starting from about the 25th, 30th minute, you could see them start to get confidence, see them start to get a little more possession back. And they grew into that possession. And they wouldn't have been able to do that, to your point, if they hadn't been able to keep their shape. So huge, huge credit to Liverpool. I agree it was a bit of a gift in that first goal because that's what really got that momentum going. But massive credit to them. And United will be very disappointed in this scoreline.
Yeah. So somebody just pointed out to me that last time Liverpool played Man United at Lee, which is where they were this weekend.
Lee Sports Village.
It was a 6-0 defeat against Man United. So that just shows the difference in the caliber and the team that they've brought themselves together and things like that.
There was so much incredible young talent on this field on both sides that I just feel like I need to call it out because that's what I enjoyed most watching this game. I sincerely enjoyed watching the young players on either team. On United side, Jade Riviere, she's the right back for United. She's 22-year-old Canadian. And then obviously Mallard, who has really grown into that number 9 position slowly but surely for United. She's 23 years old, French international. And then on Liverpool side, Grace Fisk, whose name we really all know, but probably forget that she's only 25. Yeah. And then Taylor Hines, she was wearing the captain's armband for Liverpool. She's 24-year-old. She scored the winning goal. She had a fantastic game. And to see the young talent on both sides of the ball for both of these teams, really, it was the highlight for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you want to see. Like I'm looking at the squad like now, and Liverpool do have an older squad compared to United, because obviously you look at some of the substitutions they made. Shanice van der Sande came on the 66th minute. That's a legend of the game, has been in the game for a very long time. Gemma Bonner, who we talked about last week, came back to Liverpool again. Vet has been in the game for a long time. So they, Kerry Holland's been in the game for a long time. So they do have an older squad.
Yeah, they really do.
To others. But they are starting to bring that young talent in. Missy Bo-Kearns, my goodness, that she is a midfielder, something else. Like, again, managed to like really hold back. You've got Mallard, Galton, Tooney, Paris coming at you, and she like managed to keep them well at bay.
Absolutely. We can't move on without slightly discussing United, because after a great season last year, and it certainly
Yeah.
looked like they would continue to be on the up and up, it hasn't really appeared that way, at least in the past few games. And so I was watching, really trying to study what I thought was wrong. And I think it's a combination of things. And when you watch them play, you realize that a lot of their attack is one dimensional, in the sense that it's forward, forward, forward. It's either trying to play a long ball or just trying to split lines and bypass and go up to your forwards. And there's not a lot of side to side, move the ball around, possession based in the attacking third. Anytime they were moving the ball left to right, they kind of got caught with their back line. Their midfield was way too condensed on top of their defense. And that leads them to be under immense pressure from Liverpool. And then they have to hit it long. And Amy, shout out to Amy, who's been a
Mhm.
co-host on this pod for many episodes, pointed out that she really thought that United was missing Battier in the attack, and I really
Yep.
couldn't agree more. What she added to the attack, I mean, let alone defensively, but let's just even start with what she added to the attack, was monumental, and a dimension that they're really missing. So I say that also just to say, we're talking about Emily Fox rumors of going to Arsenal. You know who could really use Emily Fox right now is Manchester United, because Emily Fox is that type of outside back that Onya Battier is, in that she will get forward. She will add that dimension to the attack. I am honestly surprised that United aren't vying for her.
I'm gonna say what Man United need to do is they need to throw the manager out. Like, I know it's easy to blame, but first off, he did annoy me. I'm not gonna lie, he did annoy me this weekend because he gave this whole speech at the end about how they're a new club and they're an up and coming club and they think, which is
Mm,
fine. They are. It is. I get that. But at the same breath, this is the same manager that was like, they deserve to be in the Champions League because it should be the champions playing the champions. I'm like, what are you? Are you an up and coming club, or are you a team that deserves to be in the Champions League? Like,
yeah.
thing. And the thing is, stories and stories are coming out about players are not playing well under him. You know, they lost a lot of talent in the summer. They lost, Batil went, Russo went, Leon went, Thomas went. Like, there was a lot of talent lost in the summer, and
Potentially Merps, potentially
potentially
Merps now.
potentially Merps now, and a lot have come out and in a roundabout way said, yeah, we didn't like playing under Skinner. So I'm not a big advocate of chucking away a manager halfway through the season, but if I was Man United, I would, is the answer. Before
I
I would get
wouldn't
rid of a
I wouldn't
player.
halfway through a season, but I would absolutely reevaluate at the end of the season, because I think Mark Skinner's gotten them to a really good place. It's a tough job to come in, let's not forget, after the one and only Casey Stoney. And I think he's done a great job with them, but perhaps it's a moment where he's gotten them as far as he can get them, and now they need somebody who can take them the rest of the way, because
Yeah.
he's gotten them very far. And yes, they are a newer team to the WSL, and what they accomplished last year for being so new was fantastic, but that's then not an excuse for when you start to fall. So, yeah, potentially. I just think that they could use Emily Fox. Okay, from United Liverpool to what Ali is most looking forward to discussing right now, and that is the Leicester City versus West Ham game, in which West Ham did get one of the better results that they've gotten
True facts.
all season. They drew with Leicester City in, oh my goodness, the 95th minute.
No,
Excuse me, the
98th minute.
98th minute.
98th minute. We had a player sent off in the 95th minute. And I'm just
Yeah.
going to tell a very quick story. I was there at that game, like I am at most games. And I was there with a work colleague because we work with West Ham, and he was there on a work capacity, and I was there as a fan. And we were so frustrated, and like my blood pressure kept going, and he's now deaf because of my screaming and all sorts. So yeah, it was a rough one. It was a rough one. I'm not gonna lie.
It was a rough one, but you still got a good result. So eh, obviously, this ends in a 1-1 draw. West Ham, like we just said, equalized in the 98th minute. Where do you want to begin, Ali? Because we're not going to dive into this whole game. Maybe the point here is really just that we have to talk about the red card. I also want to talk about West Ham, but
You always do, and I'm like, we've done this to death. I have nothing
have
more to
we?
say. I've got nothing more to say about this.
Really,
I
your opinion hasn't changed?
no,
You're still like, wait for the transfer window
yeah,
that'll save us all?
yeah, genuinely, for many, many reasons, I am still by that. I can't think. I will say,
Minute
I
market,
will, s-
everybody.
I
We're gonna
will,
come
s-
back to this.
I will say, however, for Leicester, this was a loss, not a draw. For Leicester, this was a loss, not a draw, because they could have had more goals against us. They could have, and they didn't, and they just didn't manage to do it. And obviously, conceding in the 98th minute is just painful. Leicester had a bright start, and they seem to be dropping. And I don't know if it's injury. I don't know if it's the Willie Kirk magic's not working anymore. But they're on the backslide. Do I think they're relegation? Absolutely not. But it's not the bright start that they once had. But let's get into that red card because I'm gonna declare my biases now. For anybody who doesn't know, obviously I'm a West Ham fan. I think that it was harsh. It was
Yeah.
harsh because it was obviously a combination of two yellows. The reason I
Mhm.
think it was harsh is second yellow, yellow all day, and also how are you already on a yellow? Don't do things that
Yeah.
are gonna get you. But whether you think the first yellow or not is meant to be, don't do things that's gonna get you a yellow. The first yellow for me was weak. I was like, I don't know if the ref saw it as a culmination yellow. I don't know if she decided that whatever it was, but the yellow for me was a weak yellow card.
I have a few things to say here. The first is that this game overall was very sloppy. It was both teams were sloppy on defense. Nobody could clear the ball out of their own 18 to save, like, for the life of them. It was incredible to me. And then on the flip side of that, nobody could capitalize on all of the many opportunities that were afforded to them because the other team couldn't clear the ball out of their 18. So it really was a bottom of the table battle, entertaining but sloppy, very sloppy. And I think Hawa Sissoko was a really big culprit of that. She did not have a good game whatsoever. A lot of missed opportunities, almost creating own goals sometimes, like behind the ball, slow. So first and foremost, that has nothing to do with her red card, her
No.
double yellows, but I do want to just comment and say not her strongest, not her brightest light performance.
No, I will say that I do feel in the fact that she's having to get used to play under another keeper, and I feel that about our defense because it's come out Mackenzie Arnold's torn a tricep or something. So, I thought it was a better performance by some of our defenders. Yes, it was not Howard's best game in any way, shape, or form. I thought Shannon Cook really stepped up when she hasn't for a while. I thought Kirsty Smith really stepped up when we haven't seen it for a while. I think, both keepers had a shocker. Let's be honest,
Y Yeah, neither keeper was showing very well in this
No,
game
no,
whatsoever.
no, it was
No,
shocking.
not at all. Um, Listen, I think that this red card is interesting for a lot of reasons,
Yeah,
and I think it extends beyond this specific game. I believe it was last year and how it got I believe it was a straight red for an action that neither of us believed necessarily warranted
yeah,
a straight red and then was suspended for a lot longer than the
yep.
opposing player who also was involved in that scuffle. And it was very clearly something that we needed to discuss because it felt very much um bias and
Yeah,
the fact and bias specifically in the sense that Hawa Sissoko being a black woman
yeah.
and the I forget who the other player was that she got in a little scuffle with, but
Mailing. Sarah
yeah,
Mailing. I will
yeah,
never forget that name.
who was obviously a white woman, not obviously, but obviously to us
Yeah.
who saw it.
Yeah.
It so be anytime I see Hawa Sissoko's name with a red card next to it, that comes back into the front of my mind, and I wonder again if the same occurrence is happening.
I do feel that. I
I don't
do.
feel that that happened this game. I
No,
felt that these were 2, yes, softer yellows. I do think that it was culmination, and I do think that listen, she got 2 yellows in the course of, like, 4 minutes,
yeah. No, she
and
lost her head for the second one. She lost her
so
head for the
it
second one.
was
I
truly, like you said perfectly, you're on a yellow, you
Yeah,
need to be smart about it, and we've seen this happen a bunch in the
yeah,
game, and it happened to her, and that's unfortunate, but
yeah. I
warranted.
don't think it is a mailing situation in this case.
Absolutely
I
not.
genuinely don't think it's that. What I will say, and again, call me out my biases, but I'm saying this about Jess Carter at Chelsea. I'm saying this about Lauren James at Chelsea. You know that you see that players will needle them because they know there is something that the refs will give them cards over other players. We literally saw, if you watch the Leicester West Ham game, I literally saw a player drag Viv Asai down and nothing was given. Never mind a free kick, never mind, a talking to, nothing. It was just moved on. But I feel like if Hauer had dragged down, you know, Leicester's forward, is she gonna get that talking to? Is she gonna get that card? Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's always worth bringing in the larger
Yep.
picture because that's the world we live in, and we can't talk about this in a vacuum because we did this, this didn't exist in a vacuum. It existed in the world that we live in, which is bias and racist. And so we can't really, if I'm watching this as a fan of soccer, that's two yellow cards in my opinion. Were they both soft yellow cards? Yes.
Yeah.
Does it happen? Yes. If those two fouls had occurred at minute 5 and then at minute 75, would the same thing have happened? Maybe not,
No.
but this is the world that we live in. It happens.
Yeah. It happens. But we do, before we move off of the WSL, we do have to talk about the red team that are currently in the bottom. Bristol City, due to their loss against aforementioned
You just
Chelsea.
want to talk about this because you don't want to talk about West Ham at the bottom.
No,
So you want
I'm
to talk about
done.
Bristol at the
I'm
bottom.
done. I told you I have nothing new to say. Talk to me in January. I do want to know.
But how are we supposed to talk about Bristol City, who are sitting even on points with West Ham, without talking about West Ham?
Because I want to talk about Bristol, because Bristol are in a similar situation to West Ham, because obviously points, plays, and
Okay.
things like that.
So, listeners, apply everything Ali says about Bristol City to West Ham.
No. So my point is, what Bristol need to do is, because I've talked about, West Ham needing a good January. If a team needs a good January, it's Bristol. Bristol did next to no movement whatsoever in the summer, and you would think as a newly promoted team they would try and reinforce somewhere, and they didn't, and it's bit them in the backside. Let's
I
be
would
honest.
agree. I would
So
absolutely agree.
they need a good January. And you know what? The big game is going to be the 28th of Jan, because that's West Ham Bristol at Bristol.
Yeah.
And
That's
whoever,
going to decide everything.
yeah, it is, because whoever, if one team wins, the other team's 3 points shy. If it's a draw, then they carry on. But it's 28th of Jan is going to be the big one. They're going to have to hope that West Ham Brighton fail in order
Yeah.
for them to
Circle
get up there.
that. Circle that on the calendar, everybody. That's
Yes.
going to be a big one. Let's go around the world, around the world.
To Scotland, and it was a massive weekend in the Scottish League. Celtic could only manage a draw against Hearts, which has allowed Rangers to go 3 points clear at the top of the table. This also narrows the gap between them and Glasgow City to just 5 points.
Over to Germany. Wolfsburg go back to the top after winning 1-0 this weekend. Close rivals Bayern Munich, however, could only manage a draw. This still only has 1 point in it between first and second place. So this has got to be one of the tightest leagues in Europe right now.
To France, and it was the Parisian derby on Sunday, and it was PSG that took it 2-1. All 3 goals came in the first half, but it was Paris FC that struck first and went up with a very quick penalty. PSG then came back with a penalty of their own, and then a super goal by Baltimore. Lyon extended their lead over the rest of the league with a 3-1 win over Fleury on Saturday.
And finally, to Italy, Roma came back from behind twice to claim the 3 points and remain on top of the table. Juventus lost over the weekend, which has allowed the gap between first and second to widen, but the gap between second and third has narrowed with a win by Fiorentina.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to totalfootballanalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
And finally, we are going to close out this episode in the NWSL, baby. What? There's no games happening right now? No, but there's just as much chaos. Friday was the expansion draft, and I don't even know where to begin with this.
My head still hurts. My head still hurts.
I know. For those of you listening who maybe haven't heard us talk about the expansion draft, we're not going to fully get into it. The back of it is obviously Bay FC and Utah are joining the league in 2024. And this expansion draft has been the way that the NWSL has allowed new teams to draft players from other existing teams in order to start to fill their roster. And increasingly so with this, the expansion draft really has gotten smaller and smaller because more teams are realizing that it's actually better to just go make deals and make trades. And on top of that, I think teams are becoming more conscientious of players and the fact that they are human beings. And new expansion teams are only wanting to sign players who really have expressed that they want to be there, which is a huge positive. But this whole thing in the expansion draft ended up being only 7 players drafted to the 2 new teams. And obviously across a league that's going to be 14 teams, that's very small. So this brought up a huge discussion that's been happening, but the fact that the expansion draft actually went down really brought this conversation to the surface around if this really even is the best way for the NWSL to go about expansion.
No.
So we're here to discuss it.
It's terrible. It's a terrible idea. But then I don't like the draft as a whole, to be honest. I think the draft is stupid, but we've
What do
already
you
gone
mean?
through them.
Which draft? Do you mean like the college draft?
All of the drafts are stupid because you send players to where they don't actually want to play. I think the expansion draft is not needed. I generally don't. And I'm going to use examples of when, yes, I know it's a different setup because obviously we have things, but when you look at, say, WSL and say, look at a team like, I'm going to use my beloved West Ham just because they're the best example I've got right now. So when West Ham joined the WSL, they jumped up like 4 leagues. They went from like the Southern League straight into the WSL because of licensing. What happened was we got a lot of players that were bench warming other clubs. They were like, do you know what? This is a brand new team. I'm going to get a chance to play. So that's how we ended up with Gilly Flaherty. That's how we ended up with Claire Rafferty. That like half of Chelsea's bench, to be honest. It's how we ended up with European players, American players, Brie Vasali, Brooke Hendricks, Erin Simon, all friends of the pod, came because they knew they could get game time. And I feel like you would still get that with a Bay FC. I feel like if you allowed more freedom of movement with players, you would get either, people that are from the Bay Area that want to come back home and play for, a Bay team. You will get players that are stuck on a bench and not really being appreciated by their players. And that will give you and because you guys have got the added bonus of you don't get relegated in your league.
Yeah,
you may not get into the playoffs, but you don't get relegated. So therefore that gives your team time to bed in and gel and become known as a team to play for. And you could do it that way. So I think just by having more player autonomy and freedom of movement, you could do it without the need for an expansion draft. I think because of the way the system's set up with like the college draft and all of the other bits and pieces, it may not work, but in isolation, I think you could do it.
Yeah, in isolation. You bring up a good point, which is that this is all a product of differing player autonomies.
Yes.
Because in the NWSL, only certain players are what we call free agents and free to kind of select which team they want to play for. And that has to do with the new CBA and how many years they've played in the NWSL. And that number of free agents will continue to increase because of the new CBA, as more and more players hit like that many years in the league. But there is still that issue of player autonomy. And if you have a player that, for example, is playing for, I don't know, the Chicago Red Stars and wants to play for Bay FC,
Yeah.
but they're not a free agent, the Chicago Red Stars have all of the autonomy to say, okay, Bay FC, you can have X player, but it's going to cost you XYZ.
Yeah.
And Lucy, who's the GM of Bay FC, spoke to this on the press conference after the expansion draft and essentially said, right now, the expansion draft is necessary because even with the draft, the price of some of these players that she was going for was astronomical. And without an incentive for teams to actually make deals with these new teams, it's just not going to happen. And the price would just go through the roof.
Yeah.
You know, you could be the Chicago Red Stars and say, yeah, you can have player XYZ, but all of our players are going to cost you $1 million. And that's just not feasible in the NWSL. So yes, in a vacuum, something like you're saying can work.
Yeah.
However, we can only get to that by changing the level of player autonomy, which could potentially happen. I think right now where we're at, the best thing to do is just not make the expansion draft like a huge deal.
A thing. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have to have it, which, you know, maybe we do right now because of everything we're talking about. I don't like it. I don't want it, but perhaps that's just the box that we've put ourselves in. It doesn't have to be this huge televised event for what ends up being 7 players selected because everybody else would rather make trades and deals for all of the various reasons we've already discussed. It shouldn't be that. It should just be, I don't know, a moment where the final dealings happen between everybody, and if it's not sorted, exactly, and it just gets announced. At the very least, I feel like that's what should happen. But it's definitely something that the NWSL needs to look into. I think, for example, the point made that I just mentioned by Lucy of Bay FC is a really good one, in that there has to be an incentive for other teams to release some players, because otherwise it's just over. But like you said, there's a plethora of fantastic players, and there needs to be a better way of capitalizing on that.
Yes. Very quick question. What was the most shocking decision out of this expansion draft, and why was it Paige Monaghan being lost from Louisville going to Utah?
I know. I thought it was either that. Frankly, I thought it was either that or Rachel Hill.
Hill. Oh my goodness.
Going to Bay FC from San Diego. Both of them are such underrated forwards in this league, and the fact that Racing Louisville left Paige Monaghan unprotected.
That was the thing for me. I was like, you have protection powers. You do have this for this thing. Why would you not protect Monaghan if you have her? It
makes me think that I haven't looked into it. Maybe she's coming up on a certain type of free agency and she wanted to leave anyways. There had to be something behind the scenes that was going on. That's the only way it makes sense to me. It's not even over yet because these rosters aren't full for Bay FC and Utah. And now essentially starts them trying to sign all of the internationals that they want to sign. So I think we will be seeing a lot of players from Europe potentially coming over here to one of those two teams. And then we do this all again next year for Boston. All right, everybody. I think that's a wrap on this episode and this year of the Women's Soccer Show. So weird to say, Allie.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, where has this year gone? This year's gone very quick.
I don't know, but obviously you could head over to our Patreon. We've got a lot of extra content there, specifically this week's News in 10. Allie, you want to tell them about it?
Yeah, so this week's News in 10 is talking about the insane news that Michelle Tang has bought the lion's share of the London City Lionesses. So go check out News in 10, why we tell you why that is pretty much the only team she could have bought, what that's going to mean for the championship, and all of that fun stuff.
And that is it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show 2023. A reminder that we're back Wednesday, January 17th. Happy holidays, everybody. Don't forget to watch some Champions League. It's not over yet for 2023, and we will see you in 3 weeks. And so for the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
Finale.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.